Hello, everyone. This is Steve Dubin, your host of South Shore Senior News' podcast called My Generation. We try to bring together our audience of seniors and the sandwich generation with folks who can provide some insight as to their creative aging and or the services they provide to those who are creatively aging. Today, we have with us Wendy Green, who is also a podcaster, among many things. Her podcast is called Hey Boomer. She is a graduate of UNC Asheville, lives in the greater Asheville area, or maybe I'll be corrected when she comes on, and provides some interesting connectivity for seniors. Wendy, first, welcome. Second, tell me where I went wrong
Steve, thank you so much for inviting me. It's good to see you again. I actually live down the mountain from Asheville in Greenville, South Carolina, which is lovely.
All right. Okay, so to us Yankees, we blended all together. I apologize for that. Welcome aboard. So let me start by asking you how you came into sort of the senior activity, service area.
Well, I am a senior. I really don't love that word. I am an older adult. In fact, I just turned 70, and that was a huge milestone. And it was one of those, I can't believe this. And then I had to wrap my arms around it. I said, well, it's so much better than the alternative, right? And I started getting involved with what I call the transition from our past lives, whether we were working in our careers or we were stay-at-home parents or whatever we were, into where we are now and what we're going to be, because we have another 20 to 30 years of life left that we can still be active, we can still make a difference. And maybe we don't have the enthusiasm. Maybe we do have the enthusiasm. Maybe we don't have the energy that we had when we were younger, but we still have the ability and the intellect and the desire to matter and to make a difference. And so that's what my show is about. That's what my coaching is about. And that's what I am about.
Okay. And so your podcast is called Hey Boomer. What do you think defines the boomer generation from others?
The boomers, it's a big generation. It's 1946 to 1964. And when I talk to people in this generation, they do tend to feel towards the end of it, the 1964 end of it, do tend to feel like, well, they're on the cusp of the Gen Xers. But I think a lot of us in the beginning and the middle of the boomer generation, we faced a lot of things. We, had the Kennedy assassination, the Martin Luther King assassination, the Bobby Kennedy assassination, the Bay of Pigs, the Vietnam War, all of these things influenced our generation. And we felt, I think, very much like the Gen Z feels now, that, oh my gosh, we have to do something. We have to make a difference. And so I think we were raised on feeling empowered, feeling like, what we did mattered. Somewhere along the line, many of us put that aside as we were raising our kids and building our careers, but we never lost the belief or the passion. And that's really my audience. It's the people that feel like, all right, now we're in a position to re-engage and really help make things better and help the younger generation make things better and work in collaboration with them and use our knowledge and our experience and sometimes our money as well to help along those ways.
Okay. And so in addition to your Hey Boomer podcast, which I do recommend and I do listen to,
Thank you.
my pleasure. Tell me a little bit about your What's Next coaching.
Yeah, so I started that, Steve, because of the transitions that I saw people going through. We work all these years, 40, 50 years, and then we think, oh, this is going to be great. I'm just going to relax. And we suddenly find that 12, 14, 16-hour days with nothing planned, no schedule, becomes very difficult. And what research has shown is that people actually become ill because they are not feeling a sense of purpose. They are not feeling that they matter. They are not staying engaged with community. So the loneliness epidemic, I'm sure you've heard talk about that. So the What's Next coaching program walks people through, it's 6 weeks, walks them through a series of exercises and one-on-one conversation and group conversation so that you feel like you're not the only one having these doubts and these concerns. And it helps you look at who you've been and who you want to be now. And many of us have no idea what the answer to that is because we've always been our job title. And now having this endless opportunity to describe who we might want to be and what we might want to be involved in is so much bigger than a job title. It can be a little overwhelming. And so you go back to the couch, and that's not where you want to be, right? So we walk through that, and then we have a goal of putting together a 6-month plan. And then I act as your accountability partner. So every month I'll check in. How's it going? Do we need to tweak anything? What's holding you back? How can we keep you moving forward? Because redefining yourself at our ages is no small thing. So it's powerful, though. I've seen tremendous results with it.
And so, I think that sometimes people retire and they segue into something somewhat similar to what they did for their career. So if they were, an advertising writer or a PR person like myself, they might want to draft a play or a screenplay or a novel, or they may say, you know what, I want to get out of the kitchen completely and find something that is completely novel and a catalyst for a whole new way of life. Can you give us maybe an exercise of how to explore what you might be drawn to as next?
Yeah, and that's really insightful, Steve, because I think that's true. I think a lot of us feel like, this is what I've built my career on. These are where my skills are. And so I'm going to just segue, as you said, into something similar. What I have people do is write a life story. I give them a lot of prompts to write this story. And the purpose for writing a life story is to look back and say, what did I love doing when I was 10 years old, when I was 15 years old, when I was 25? Where did I feel the most excited when I did something well in that area? Where did I get the most recognition? What made me feel like I really had done something that I was proud of? And a lot of times, once we get in our careers, like advertising, or for me, like in training and development, we have to put those things aside because we have responsibilities and we have all these other time constraints. And we forgot, I used to love to play the piano. And now I don't have a piano. And so it's a time to look and say, is that something I really want to do again? Get a keyboard, play. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. At this time of our lives, I think sometimes we get stuck and say, well, we have to find our purpose. And we then go, capital P, purpose? Like, what? I'm not going to solve world hunger. I'm not going to like cure cancer. No, a purpose is what's deep inside of you that gives you fulfillment, that gives you a reason to get up in the morning. And if for me that turns into, I want to play the piano again, that doesn't even mean I have to go and play in a band. It's just because it brings me joy. And so get a keyboard. So I think looking back in our life story, where we were successful, what gave us fulfillment, and where we were not successful, what did we learn from those things that didn't work out well? Don't bring those up into the future. It's a very powerful exercise, and a lot of people learn a lot about themselves during that exercise. And sometimes they say, maybe I need a little therapy to look at what some of these other things. But generally, it really does open some doors. And you know what they say, like if you're in awareness, if I think about music and that I want to play the piano again, all of a sudden, what do you start to see? Pianos and people playing, and you meet somebody, and all of a sudden those things are now in your awareness because you haven't blocked them anymore. They're possibilities now. So I think it's a great exercise.
Great. And then, on a personal level, you've had this transition. I think it was during COVID, you lost your job. And you use that term pivoted into what you're doing now. What are some of the bumps along the road that you've experienced?
Ooh. Just since I started this one, since Hey Boomer. Yeah. So it's true. March 2020, I was in training and development, and we were not doing in-person training. And I asked myself, okay, so we're all going to be locked down. How do you want to feel, Wendy? And I said, well, I want to feel relevant. I want to feel like I still matter. I want to feel like I can still make a difference. I paused for a moment and I thought, you know what? I know hundreds of people in my town that need to feel that way. That means thousands of people around the country who are now isolated by themselves in my age group are definitely going to need to feel like they still matter. And so I started as a Facebook Live. That's all I knew how to do. The learning curve of creating a podcast has been enormous. There were days that I felt like my brain could not absorb one more thing. And I have been very fortunate to find other people that I've been able to consult with and try things out. And if you go back and listen to the early shows and where I am now, you'll see a big difference in how the show is structured and the quality of the guests that I have on the show. Now, Steve, people call me. I have book publishers calling me. I have physicians who want to talk about healthcare calling me. It's just blows my mind that it has taken off like this. And I've become known as one of the leaders in the pro-aging, let's say, arena, where we talk about you are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. We may have to adjust a little bit, but you're never too old.
Okay. And how do you see the future for what you're doing? Either extensions of what you're doing or doing what you're doing somewhat differently?
Well, I'm actually ahead of the curve because a lot of podcasts up until recently were just audio. And because I started as a Facebook Live, mine has always had the video component. And a lot of podcasters are moving that way now to have the video component. So in that sense, I'm ahead of the curve. I would love to find ways to take the show on the road. I have many ideas on how that would be to have, go to places where people are and have live audiences, or interview people with what they're doing now in the place where they are. So who knows how that might work out, but it sounds like something I would really enjoy doing.
Okay. And then what about in general, sort of the future of aging? We know that you and I don't want to play bingo or mahjong. Maybe I'll play a little shuffleboard, but not a lot. How do you see the future of, sort of aging in general, and how society responds to that? Different ways of living, different ways of interacting as groups, and even living as an individual.
That's a huge question. There's several groups working on ageism. It's really the main ism that is not addressed in work these days. In the diversity, equity, inclusion, ageism is rarely part of that. I just interviewed Rob Schwartz, who is the son of Maury Schwartz from Tuesdays with Maury. And Maury had written a document called they renamed it The Wisdom of Maury and just published it. And he talked about ageism back in the late 80s and early 90s, because at 70, Brandeis University forced him into retirement. That still happens in some professions. But I do see more and more of those of us in this generation still working because we like what we're doing. That's the best. Or two, because we still need the income. And I think what's really important to help make this work well is to build bridges between the generations instead of the finger pointing. This generation is lazy, that generation is on the phone all the time, they don't want to work in the office, or the younger generation pointing at us and saying, oh, they're technologically illiterate, or they're taking our job advancements away. We need to build bridges and figure out how to work with the different generations so that we cross-mentor each other. We have a lot we can learn from each other instead of seeing each other as different and unreachable. And I think once, in a lot of ways, Steve, we're role models, right, for the younger generation, because they don't have to fear aging if they can see us as being relevant and involved and enthusiastic individuals, even as we hit our 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Okay. Well, we're coming to the end of our conversation. I'm sure people would like to contact you to learn more about what you're doing. What's the best way to reach you?
Well, I would love for people to subscribe to the podcast. It's Hey, Boomer. And you can find it on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube. You can also check out my website, which is heyboomer, all one word, .biz, B-I-Z. And it has all the other things listed there about blogs and coaching and all of that.
Okay, well, thank you for being with us. This has been another exciting episode of South Shore Senior News' podcast. And I encourage folks to contact me if you feel you have a guest who would be of interest to our audience. You can find us at southshorenews.com or southshorenew.com. And I look forward to talking with you in the future. Thank you, Wendy, for being our guest.
Thank you, Steve.